back with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So, where the fuck do I even start with last night? First, I'll start here. It's all my fault. Everything that happened last night at the gig was my fault. I should have known better. I should have known better than to put 3 agents of absolute fucking chaos together in the same room at the same time, just for any reason, let alone for a fucking gig. A room just can't hold that sort of energy. It's too much for it. It's like a fucking tinderbox. Just anything could fucking set it off. So I put myself 100% to blame. I would even say 110. If they're the agents of chaos, if those 3 are the agents of chaos, Stingray Thunder, formerly known as Matthew Nenke, Miles Milson, and Andrew Roberts. If they're the agents of chaos, then I'm the facilitator of the chaos. So where the fuck do we even start? So the gig, we get to the gig early. Me and Andrew Roberts set up the room. It's looking good. Fucking Roberts is looking nervous. He hasn't been on stage in 5 years. In his mind, he's the greatest comedian that's ever walked the face of the planet. And he hasn't done a gig for 5 years. So the only way he can be disproved that he's the greatest comedian that's ever walked the planet is if he actually does a gig. So he's looking very fucking nervous. He's taken like 2 or 3 shits in like half an hour, which is a normal comedian thing to do with the nerves. But it's all going good. The room starts filling up. There's a few people there specifically to see Roberts. Taz and her fiance, Chris. Taz is the girl. I don't know if she wants to remain anonymous, but she sent in a fucked up Friday story. Let's just say it was the story in Germany. Do you remember that one? And there was a bouncer and there may have been shit somewhere. So there's another agent of chaos. A side agent. And then there was Dave, another listener of the podcast, and his crew. And they're sweet. Good dudes. They're all there to see Andrew Roberts. So the room starts packing up. It's absolutely packed to the rafters. It was the biggest night we've ever had there. It was just packed. Standing room was full. Seats were full. I had to go downstairs and say, don't let anyone else in. No one else can come in. There's no room to put anyone. It was absolutely fucking heaving. I'm like, this is great because these 3 comics who I love, Stingray Thunder, Miles Milson, and Andrew Roberts, they don't generally get to perform in front of like decent crowds in decent rooms because they're complete and absolute fuck-ups. So I'm like, yes, they finally get an opportunity. So I'm like, all right, this is how we're going to do the lineup. We'll have Sam Kisajuki in first because no one else can go first. You can't put Stingray first. You can't put Andrew Roberts first. You can't put Miles first. I'm not going first. You have to put Sam on. He's good. He's reliable. He's likable. He's funny. Then I'm like, Mike Chan can go second. I was thinking maybe I'll put Miles on second and then I'll put Mike Chan on third. But I was like, nah, Miles is a great comedian. Let's fucking put him on third. I love Miles. And Miles can just fucking take it out to the break. So it's 3 comics, a break, and then another 3 comics. And the next 3 comics, it was going to be Stingray opens the second, Andrew Roberts middles the second, and I close out the show. So anyway, the show kicks off. Sam kills it. Mike Chan comes on. He does all right. He fucks up a little bit, but who gives a shit? He was fine. Then it's Miles. It's Miles' turn. And there's already like energy going around. Miles acting weird at the back. He's got headphones in. I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Andrew Roberts is walking in and out, pacing around. Stingray Thunder, he's bought like 7 of his friends and all of them are on ketamine. This is what I'm talking about. Stingray Thunder is not so much an agent of chaos himself, but chaos follows him. He drags it along with him everywhere he goes. So if it's not him, it's one removed. So his whole crew that he brought down, all on ketamine, all fucked up, all like yelling out inappropriately, yelling out fucking in the middle of shit, just having a talk and all that sort of stuff. So the room's chaos in itself already. And then Miles gets on stage and he starts strong. Couple of jokes about taking shits in places, couple of jokes about something else, a good joke about trying to get into a pub without a shirt. The crowd they're apprehensive because because he's fucking chaos. That's why. They're apprehensive because they don't know what the fuck he's doing and going on about. But he's a genuinely funny dude, so he always has done this. Like 4 or 5 in the crowd will be curling over laughing. They get him. The rest of the crowd will be like, what the fuck planet has this cunt landed from? This is incoherent shit. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, most of the crowd began leaning towards the he's an alien speaking incoherent, crazy shit side. And he started to tank. He started to tank rather badly. I still found it funny because I'm a facilitator of chaos. So I was still laughing, but the crowd was completely silent. And then he just kept on running it into the ground, just driving it into the ground. And he did this joke about a girl's smelly pussy. No, it was the first girl he ate out. He's like something along the lines of she poured like 2 liters of vinegar in her pussy, put a cork in it. And then did a half marathon and then came back and popped the cork, and he makes the cork popping sound, which was good. And then she's like, here, have at it. Something like that. That's the joke. I'm not too sure what the point of the joke was, besides this bitch has a smelly pussy. So that seemed to be the whole point of the joke. And look, it didn't go well. That joke didn't land. Anyway, Tom Orr, who's emceeing the night, the guy I run the room with, he's shell-shocked. Because it's our best night and it's starting to go off the rails a little bit. So it's break now. After Miles' set, a bunch of people just stand up and leave. Leave the venue completely. Never to be seen again. Ever again. They're never coming back to the venue ever again to see a comedy. Ever. That's done. That's their experience for the next 5 years. And then Miles gets off stage and he walks to the back where the bar area is. And I'm speaking to a couple of people in the crowd and Mike Chan, the comedian. And Andrew Roberts comes over to me and he's like, "Oi, man, Miles is getting belted over there. Go help him." So I look over and the bartender is absolutely fucking tearing strips off Miles Milson, just yelling at him, going, "Fuck you, fuck this." And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then another girl is yelling at Miles Milson, going, "It was fucking a low blow. That was disrespectful." So there's the bartender and some random girl just fucking yelling their heads off at Miles. And Miles is just standing there, just copping it. He's going a little bit red. He doesn't know what's going on. I walk over and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are they talking about? He's like, "Don't ask anything. It's all good." And the bartender's just losing her shit at Miles. The other girl is yelling at him, going, "You don't understand how much girls have to deal with their smelly pussies. You don't know what a problem it is." She was drunk and high on ketamine. It was one of Nenki's friends. She's just going off her head about smelly pussies. But the bartender is absolutely fucking livid at Miles. And I didn't understand what it was about, and Miles wouldn't tell me. So the bar manager, who's normally there, who's normally working the bar, but she wasn't working the bar today because she was there with her family because her nephew passed away the day before. And so she thought she would bring her family to the venue she works at to watch the comedy show instead of work at it. So she comes in and sort of settles everything down. And I have a speak to her and I'm like, what's the fucking problem here? And she's like, well, the bartender got offended at what Miles was doing because this bartender was Aboriginal. And she thought Miles was doing an Aboriginal character on stage because what Miles does, he goes on stage and he turns up his accent like 1,000,000%. So he goes on stage and he's like, yeah, bruh, what's up, bruh? And it comes across as a little bit of a fucking Aboriginal like accent. Hey, bruh, hey. So she's thought he's done like a verbal version of blackface or something, and she's Aboriginal, so she's going off her head. But the bar manager's there and she's settling everything down. So I walk away, I speak to the crowd again. I'm like, I don't know what it was about, some bullshit, some fucking Miles bullshit, they're sorting it out. And then I'm like, I better go downstairs and work on some of my material for the night. So I go downstairs, and as I'm walking around, I see Miles walking towards me. And I'm like, oh, dude, what the fuck happened in there? He's like, oh, they were just going on about whatever. They thought I was doing an Aboriginal voice. And the other girl was talking about a pussy joke. And I think they both wanted me. And I'm like, who wanted you? He's like, the girl's yelling. I'm like, what, like wanted to fuck you? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're so out of your fucking mind. This is insane. So I'm speaking to Miles. And as I'm speaking to Miles, Andrew Roberts walks past and doesn't say a word to us. Just walks past, walks down an alley. I'm like, oh, he must be nervous going through his set. So I say goodbye to Miles. Miles leaves and I go back upstairs. And it's fucking chaos upstairs. Tom comes up to me, Tommy Orr. He comes up to me. He's like, we've lost 2 comedians, man. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, they got kicked out. I'm like, what? Who? He's like, Miles got kicked out of the venue. Miles got kicked out of the venue. And your other mate, the other comedian, got kicked out. I'm like, who? Nenki? And I hear Nenki. Nenki's like, no, it wasn't me. I'm here. I'm like, Roberts? I'm like, Roberts got kicked out? What the fuck happened? And so I go to the bartender, the bar manager, who's not even meant to be working. She's there just putting out fires. So I go to the bar manager and I'm like, what happened? And she's like a little bit shaken up. She's like, the comedian called me a cunt, said, I hope the venue burns to the fucking ground, and then some things about corporations. And I'm like, Roberts, it was Roberts, wasn't it? That sounds exactly like Roberts. She's like, I don't know, but he seemed really angry. I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, the bartender was yelling at Miles, and then this other girl came over and started yelling at the bartender, and this other girl was Taz, the listener of the podcast who came to see Andrew Roberts. So she was going nuts. So there's back and forth. And then Andrew Roberts comes in and fucking throws in his 2 cents. And he's yelling at the bar manager. And she goes, are you performing here? And Andrew Roberts goes, not anymore. You're a cunt. I hope the fucking venue burns to the ground and fuck your corporate. Fuck your corporate hellholes. Fuck you. And apparently the bar manager was like, this place isn't corporate. And it's not. It's like it's like an independent jazz club. And Roberts, as he was leaving, called the bartender who was yelling at Miles a whore. Jesus fucking Christ. And then stormed out. And that must have been when I saw him walk past me and Miles, and he didn't say a word. So I'm trying to contact Andrew Roberts now. I'm like, this is the cunt that's meant to be on. This is who some people came out to see. Where the fuck is he? This is pure Andrew Roberts chaos. This is the Joker. You just can't have these cunts in the same room at the same time. If it wasn't this, it would have been something else. Something else would have happened. So I'm trying to contact Andrew Roberts. He's not answering anything. I'm like, well, fucking, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll just do more time. And then Dave, the listener of the podcast, he's been to a bunch of gigs. He's been a supporter of the podcast for ages. He comes up to me and he's like, do you want me to do some time? I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck is going on? Do you want me to do some time? And I was like, why fucking not, actually? Why fucking not? I'm like, yeah, do you want to do 5 minutes? He's like, yeah, I'll do 5 minutes. I'm like, this makes absolutely no fucking sense at all, but all right, you do 5 minutes instead of Andrew Roberts. So second half starts like 25 minutes late. Half the crowd don't know what the fuck's going on because it's just pure chaos in there now. Half the people are finding it fun. Half the people are like angry. The rest of the people out of the halves are just fucking bewildered. And another thing, the ladies who work at my daughter's childcare, they were there again. So they're seeing all this chaos. So anyway, Matthew Nenke, Stingray Thunder, he gets on stage and his thing is he believes he's the edgiest comedian to ever live. So he deliberately just says the worst shit he can come up with. And sometimes they have punchlines and sometimes they don't. Sometimes he's just saying the worst shit. So he gets on and he does whatever the fuck he does. What he does is walk the other half of the room. So when we started the show, I was downstairs. It was standing room only and I had to cut everyone off. After the break, there was no one standing. There was a couple of empty chairs, but the room was still sort of full. After Nenke's set, Stingray Thunder's set, there was a lot of empty chairs. Quite a few empty chairs. And I'm like, let's just fucking drive this into the ground then. So Thunder finishes his set, gets off stage, and I'm like, well, I guess it's Dave's turn to go on stage. This listener of my podcast that's never done comedy before in his life. And he gets on stage and he starts doing comedy with no punchlines. Like he went up there, he did all right. He didn't freeze up. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't nervous. He just had no punchlines. He just told a 5-minute, 6-minute story that sort of didn't go anywhere, or a bunch of stories that didn't go anywhere. But that's fine. It's his first time. I don't know why he said he wanted to do some time. It didn't make none of it made sense. So I thought, why not just throw him up? But for a first time, it wasn't so bad. He just needs some punchlines. Anyway, he finishes. I get on stage and I basically just do this podcast. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck happened? And I just analyze everyone's jokes and I clean up as best as I can. I don't do any material. I just do crowd work the whole time. I did one joke at the end and then, oh yeah, I called Andrew Roberts on stage because the crowd was chanting, Roberts, Roberts, Roberts. It's fucking insane. So I call Roberts on FaceTime and he answers and I put him to the microphone and I'm like, Roberts, the people who came to see you want you to come back and do your gig. And he's like, you can tell the venue they're fucking cunts. And I don't know what else he said. Something like, fuck them, fuck the venue. And then he hung up. Classic Andrew Roberts style. And that was that was the end of the fucking night. We did it. That's a mistake you make only once every 5 years. Every 5 years, you forget what degenerate pieces of shit your friends are, and you try and get them together. People who should never be put together, you put them together, and you think it's going to be different, and it's never different. It's always the same. So the people who came to see Andrew Roberts were pissed, and they got me to call Roberts and ask him if he wants to hang out at the pub. And he said he wants to. So I went and picked him up, and we went to a pub, and everyone hung out for an hour or two. Roberts, Stingray Thunder, his 7 ketamine friends, Dave, who did the gig, and his crew, Taz, another agent, and her fiance, Chris. And it was just a night of absolute fucking chaos. But it was never, ever going to be any different than that. That's how it was always going to work out. It was never going to work out any different. Absolute and utter fucking chaos. And now I just need to deal with the venue. If they even have us back. And that's it. The show goes on. Jesus fucking Christ. I did a podcast with Andrew Roberts last night as well after the show. I'll be putting that up on the Patreon if you're interested in that. He's like, that's the greatest show I've ever been a part of. Anyway, fucking absolute chaos. All right, that'll fucking do it for today. If you want to hear the Roberts episode, fucking join the Patreon. It's boylecomedy.com. That'll do, and I'll see you the fuck later.